Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got exiled from Hidden Leaf and forms a new village, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. So let's get into the video. The city was bustling with life. It was early morning in the rather young village and the people were crowding the streets. The village was rather large, going on for miles. In the center one could see a tall building, towering over all other buildings. The tower was the center of the village. It was easily the tallest building in the village, towering to at least 10 stories tall. If one were to stand at the very top, they would see vast forests, and beyond that one would see a chain of mountains surrounding the entire village. This was Tsukigakure. This was the village hidden in the moonlight. In town, a young boy was walking down a busy road. The boy had medium shoulder-length spiky hair. This child was wearing a black coat, which reached down to his mid-thigh. A fishnet shirt could be seen through the open buttons of the coat, black pants, black boots, and fingerless black gloves. Lastly, this child was wearing a red headband tied around his forehead. He was walking down the street towards his intended destination. What idiot decided that the academy should be this early in the morning? Said the black-clad youth as he pulled out a stick of pocky and began munching on it. You know Yami, you say that every morning. Exclaimed another, slightly taller, boy with long brown hair. The black-clad youth Yami turned around to see his oldest friend. This new taller boy was clad in a grey coat, grey pants, and traditional blue ninja sandals. This boy has a more muscular build to him and was half a foot taller than Yami. Bankatsu is just so damn troublesome waking up this early. I bet that Abachan has something to do with it. Groaned Yami while continuing to walk, now with Bankatsu at his side. Bankatsu grinned at that comment. Don't let Megumi-sensei hear you say that, you know she's touchy about her age. Warned Bankatsu. Whatever, hey guys. Screamed a female voice. Both boys turned around to see the owner of the voice. A red-headed young girl who was about an inch shorter than Yami. The young woman in question was wearing a green sleeveless shirt, black shorts, and brown sneakers. The sight of her in shorts was enough to almost give Bankatsu a nosebleed. A swift blow from the elbow to Bankatsu's gut, courtesy of Yami, brought him out of his reverie. Hey, move it you two, we're going to be late for the Genin exam. Exclaimed the girl as she ran by the two boys, her waist-length red hair flowing in the wind. Damn it, it's way too freaking early for Kasai's perkiness. Groaned Yami. Oh chill out, she's excited because of the exams. She's been like this all month. Stated a grinning Bankatsu. Yay whatever lover boy, replied Yami. Let's just get this over with so I can get back to sleep. Lazy bum. Ninja Academy. By the time the trio arrived, half the class was already present. They took us close to the back of the classroom. Kasai grabbed a seat in the 4th row, there were 6 rows total, and started talking with another friend. Yami and Bankatsu found their way to the 6th row, their normal seats, and did what they did every day before class started. Bankatsu used every last ounce of his ninja skills to spy on Kasai. Yami on the other hand found a more productive way to spend his time. The sound that everyone knew meant one thing. Yami was sleeping in class again for the 8th time this week, and it was only Wednesday. Dream. Yami was sitting on a tree branch in the middle of the vast forest. Trees were all surrounding him on all sides. Tears were sliding down Yami's face. Some sakura petals were falling from the trees and one landed on his lap. Suddenly, die. Yami turned to see a silver-haired boy flying towards him. His arms extended out to each side, each holding a wakizashi. It looked like the boy was gliding at him using the short swords as wings. Weakling. The silver-haired youth was about to reach Yami when suddenly everything went black. Ninja Academy, huh? Oh just a dream though, Bankatsu. He found himself disturbed from his dream by roars of yelling. He didn't need to turn to see what commotion was all about. For it happened every morning. The most popular girl had just walked into the academy, Uzumaki Kitsune. And every guy was crowding her trying to ask her out. After taking a glance down he noticed that half the guys there weren't even in the graduating class. Troublesome, thought Yami. For the life of him he couldn't understand what the big deal about her was. So what if she was the hottest girl in class? So what if she is going to be named Rookie of the Year? So what if her great-grandfather, Uzumaki Naruto, was the founder and first Tsukikage of the village? Damn it, Yami mentally cursed. Though he could care less about Kitsune, he did have nothing but respect for the great Naruto. He was the greatest ninja of his time. He brought many ninjas together to create Tsukikage. He defeated 9 of the 12 members of Akatsuki. He created the awesome sexy no jutsu. Yami flinched at that last thought and then growled. Damn, Bankatsu is rubbing off on me. He took one last glance at Kitsune and actually caught her gazing at him. Their gazes locked on each other for a while. Finally Kitsune was broken out of her trance by the person who Yami dubbed the most annoying insect on this planet. Jaimin Jakani. Jaimin was a member of the most prestigious clan in a hidden village, well right after the Uzumaki clan. "Oh my beautiful Kitsune-chan, let me take you away from these brutish creatures," bellowed the insect, I mean Jaimin. Kitsune slightly grinned at this. The other boys growled at Jaimin. Yami decides to continue his nap. "It's alright, Jaimin-san," really comments on Kitsune. After looking up once more at Yami, she moves to her normal seat in the front row. Jaimin follows Kitsune's gaze only to find that she was gazing upon Yami, which made his blood boil. He hated when Kitsune paid attention to other boys, however for some odd reason he especially hated Yami. He decided to go torment him, like he did every morning, so he started to walk up the stairs. "At last, what are you doing here? You don't honestly believe someone like you could possibly pass the genin exam?" asked Jaimin. Yami cracked open an eye and mentally sighed, "Troublesome. Worry about yourself, Jaimin," stated Yami, who then proceeded to go back to sleep. Jaimin sneered at Yami's indifference but quickly regained his composure and simply stated, "Yeah right, once a dead last, always a dead last." Jaimin then started walking down the stairs. Yami then receives a quick elbow to the gut from Bankatsu, the signal. Yami then cracked open both his eyes, not enough for anyone to see his eyes open, but enough for him to see Jaimin. No one saw Yami's ice blue eyes shift to a shining silver color. He then started to concentrate and sent out his invisible hand, which grabbed woman's right leg just as he was walking. Jaimin screamed as he started to fall down the stairs like he, for some reason beyond his comprehension, did every morning. Him crashing at the bottom started a roar of laughter from most of the class. Bankatsu and Kasai were cracking up, Yami was smirking, his eyes had already shifted back to blue, Kitsune was trying to suppress her giggles and failing miserably. Most of the rest of the class were laughing as well, except Jaimin-kun. Jaimin's fangirls who proceeded to help him back up. "What is all the commotion in here?" shouted an older woman wearing a standard jounin uniform. This black-haired blue-eyed woman was Megumi Tsunami, the academy teacher. She gazed around the room and sighed. She was of course one of the only people who knew about Yami's gift. After casting him a quick glare, she ordered all the students to their seats. Yami's little talent seemed to always be used against Jaimin. He could clearly remember when he learned of this little skill. Flashback playground, 3 years ago. A young boy with spiky black hair was being held up by his collar by another boy. "Ah, you're such a weakling, Yami, you'll never become a ninja." Taibi Yami was trying to hold back his tears after being beaten up by the other boy for the 5th time this year. Bankatsu groaned the youth. "Why don't you just go home and cry to your mommy?" "Oh wait, that's right. You don't have one. You're all alone," teased Chibi Bankatsu. But this Yami's eyes widened, his normally blue eyes started to shine an eerie silver color. Chakra started to flare from him. Bankatsu could only stare in shock. "Leave me alone," screamed Yami. At the last syllable, a wave shot out from the boy that sent Bankatsu flying at least 20 feet, dropping Yami on the ground at the same time. Chibi Yami could only stare in shock at the now unconscious boy. A few seconds later, Yami felt sleep take him. Then flashback academy classroom. Soon afterwards, Bankatsu apologized to Yami in hopes of escaping a beating himself. Soon after that, however, they became good friends. Bankatsu enjoyed the fact that Yami could help him pull pranks on other kids. Yami enjoyed the fact that Bankatsu didn't have a crush on Kitsune, he was on Kasai. Yami's power. Soon after the incident, Yami worked up the courage to try and recall the power. After weeks of trying, he succeeded in levitating a small leaf into the air. 5 seconds later, he fell unconscious. After using it the first time, Yami was able to summon it a lot easier than before. Every day he would train his new power in secret, enhancing it. The day he could pick up items with his mind that are about twice the weight of which he can pick up with his arms for about half a minute. However, this skill did require a great deal of chakra to use, and it also required more control for the heavier objects. So while he was training his telekinesis, he was also training his chakra control. Today he has almost completely mastered the tree climbing exercise. However, he also chose to train his body. He trained hard in the academy's basic taijutsu. At times he would mix up his power with his taijutsu, using the former to push his punches or kicks in the direction he chooses for added power and speed. He also uses it to maneuver his own body for dodging. Lastly, he uses it to improve his less than average aim. He's getting quite adept at controlling a shuriken. Unfortunately, training these skills cost him to neglect his ninjutsu, and Yami only knew the basics of everything, hinge and bushing. He however was miserable. Yami shuddered when he thought of Megumi sensei's pop quiz. Megumi cast on all her students as they were leaving the classroom. Kitsune and some of the other students noticed the illusion right away and dispelled it. It took other students a little while longer. Poor Yami and some others were stuck walking around the academy building for hours trying to find their way home. "Alright, I'm going to call all of you to the back room one by one and we'll begin the genin exam," stated Megumi. Megumi left the room and one by one started to call out students to start their exams. 5 minutes later, Uzumaki Kitsune got up and started walking to the back room, but not before receiving good luck from almost all the class, 10 phone numbers, 8 date offers, and 3 marriage proposals. 1 minute later, Kitsune came out proudly wearing her new hide, with a crescent moon on the metal plate. No surprise there, thought Yami. She sat back down in her seat. Ishida Bankatsu got up and left for the back rooms after Yami, and Kasai wished him luck. 2 minutes later, Bankatsu came out, wearing his hide around his neck, with a grin on his face. Izuki Kasai. It was Kasai's turn, and she looked nothing short of confident. She got up and ran to the back room before Yami or Bankatsu could wish her any luck. 1 minute later, Kasai walked out wearing her hide to tie back her hair. Bankatsu nearly whooped with joy. Dakani Jaimin. After receiving cheers from the girls, he strutted off to the back room. 1 minute later, Jaimin walks back into the classroom wearing his hat as a belt buckle. Yami groaned mentally when he saw Jaimin smirk in his direction. Yami got up and lazily walked down the stairs after Kasai, and Bankatsu wished him luck. When he reached the bottom, he was surprised when he heard his name. Yami-san. Yami turned to the owner of the voice, Kitsune. Good luck, she said. Yami could only raise an eyebrow before stuttering, thank you. He then proceeded to walk off confused. She hadn't talked to him in nearly 5 years, let alone wish him luck. It was that day. Yami. A loud voice shouted, breaking him out of his trance. Hurry up or I'll fail you now. Shouted an angry-looking Megumi. Yami knew his Megumi-sensei wouldn't do that if they were far too close, no matter how many times he called her, or how many times she violently woke him up when he fell asleep. Even still, he decided not to annoy her further. Yami only nodded and walked straight through the door. Ninja Cademy back room. Yami looked around the room. In the front of the room, Megumi-sensei took her seat right next to the goddamn Tsukikage. Waizu Jin, the fifth, was a wise old man wearing a traditional dark blue robe and hat of the Tsukikage. Around the two sat multiple jounins. They were all wearing standard jounin uniforms. Probably the jounin senseis, thought Yami. Both Megumi and Waizu smiled warmly at Yami. Some of them were merely looking at Yami in anticipation. Some were indifferent. The rest were glaring at him. If looks could kill, Yami would have keeled over the second he walked in the room. Seeing them look at him in such a manner made Yami's blood boil. They're glaring at me again, and it's all because of that bastard. Yami. Huh. Yami was once again broken out of his trance. Megumi sighed. Would you please pay attention for once? Megumi groaned. Okay Yami, we'll start out with your aim. From where you currently are, you must hit the target behind you. You must hit at least one bullseye. You may choose to use a kunai, shuriken, or dot you may throw when you're ready, however you only have 5 chances to hit the bullseye. Megumi explained. Yami mentally sighed. He hated marksmanship tests. He didn't particularly like any of the 3 selections. He could stand Fuma shurikens because it was easier to use with his telekinetic powers. He turned to see the target. It was a good 20 feet away. Yami pulled out one of his shuriken and aimed. Yami's eyes momentarily shifted silver once again. Finally he threw. It went far and fast and hit the bullseye without any problems. Most of them were surprised. Some muttering things like, he got it in one shot. Isn't this kid supposed to be the dead last? Yami mentally groaned. I swear you fall asleep a few times in class and I'm suddenly dead last. Well, actually there were those times during tests, and that one time when I was sparring Megumi. Still can't figure out how I fell asleep on my feet. Hell, I don't even know that. Megumi and Waizu smiled at each other knowingly. Waizu also knew all about Yami. Very good. Megumi praised. Now I want you to show me either one of the academy. Whenever you are ready you may begin. This one Yami had no problems with doing. Because of the training he did in his other skills, he never learned any other. However, he did learn great chakra control, which always helps him out in all his ninjutsu. He performed the Bunshin no Jutsu. He created 3 perfect clones of himself. Megumi and Waizu both smiled once again. They knew that Yami would ace the test. Besides his title of dead last, Waizu stood up and walked up to Yami. Congratulations Yami-kun, I present to you the heed of Tsukigakure. You are now officially a genin of the village hidden in the moonlight. With that, Waizu handed Yami his heed. After removing his headband, Yami tied it around his head and smiled at the old man. Thank you Tsukikage-sama. Yami bowed respectfully. The Tsukikage was one of the only people that Yami could stand. He never looked at him with those eyes like the other people do. He always tried to help him. Tsukikage-sama and Megumi-sensei are the ones who looked after me after my mother. Fantastic job Yami. Megumi's voice once again broke Yami out of his trance. She smiled sadly at him and gave him a small hug. Seeing her smile like that made Yami believe that she was going to miss him. Oh, how wrong he was. Yami bowed once again and walked out the room. Waizu's face suddenly became very serious. Well, what do you think about him? Asked the cage. No. That walking sin. They couldn't finish. A glare from both the cage and Megumi almost made him choke. They chose to reiterate. I mean that the young man does have skills, however the 9 chosen are much better candidates. Both Waizu sighed. Very well then. You're all dismissed, stated Waizu. With all that poofed out of the room, only Waizu and Megumi were left. Megumi had to suppress her tears. She was about to leave when the Tsukikage caught her attention. Megumi, do you remember these 2 students? They were in your class last year, asked Waizu as he pulled out 2 pictures. Ninja Academy, classroom. As Yami walked into the academy he could see Bankatsu, Kasai, and Kitsune smile at him. Megumi walked in after Yami. Congratulations to those of you who passed today, and those of you who didn't will have to try again next year. Come back early. She could hear Yami groan. Tomorrow morning for your team assignments. You're all dismissed. With that Megumi poofed out of the classroom. The students started to run home to their parents, some continued to bug Kitsune, and others continued to bug Jaimin, while he continued to bug Kitsune. Kasai on the other hand grabbed both Yami and Bankatsu and proceeded to drag their favorite hangout, the Ichiraku Ramen stand. Ichiraku Ramen stand. The old lady, known to the trio as the Ramen Lady, looked up to see her favorite 3 customers. Hello you 3, what may I get for you? Asked Natsuko Ichigo. 1 pork ramen, said Yami. 1 chicken ramen, said Bankatsu. 1 shrimp ramen, said Kasai. Humming right up, stated Natsuko. Natsuko was the owner of Ichiraku Ramen stand. She was a middle-aged woman, wearing a purple kimono. She had black hair and yellow eyes. The original owner was said to be the best ramen cook in the world. He owned it many decades ago, back when the first Tsukikage was still alive. The story goes that the first spent years looking for the best ramen chef in the world, and when he found him he gave him the job on the spot and agreed to give him a restaurant in his village. However, that was probably just a rumor. It's also said that the first was there every day and ate at least 40 bowls of ramen a day. Finally, after all the hard work, we're finally genin, screamed Kasai. Bankatsu grinned. Yay, I just hope we're all on the same team. That would be awesome. We'll find out tomorrow. Nothing we can do but wait, stated Yami, fingering his forehead protector. Ramen's ready, eat up kids. Thank you, the kids replied. They all ate in silence afterwards. When Bankatsu was finished he turned to Yami and said, hey Yami, do you mind being my guinea pig? I mean, would you mind helping me test out a new skill? Bankatsu tried to look innocent after his slip-up. Yami's eyebrow twitched. Jackass, he muttered. So will you help me out? Yeah, sure, but first I'm going to have another bowl. Awesome, I'll meet you over at training field 14, stated Bankatsu as he ran off after leaving the money he owed. Hey, wait up, I'll come with you, Kasai yelled and ran off, also after leaving what she owed. Yami sighed. 1 miso ramen please. Itsuko smiled, coming right up. After he was finished he paid and left for training field 14. Training field 14. Yami was walking towards the training field when suddenly a scream caught Yami's attention. Bankatsu? You bastard, what have you done to him? He heard Kasai scream. With that Yami started running full speed towards the training field. What he saw made his blood boil. Bankatsu was on the ground bleeding from multiple needle wounds. He was curled up on the ground looking very much like a pincushion. A fearful Kasai right next to him. You underhanded, dishonorable bastard. She screamed again, looking towards one of the trees. There standing was none other than Jakani Jaimin. Jaimin smirked and said, dishonorable you say. The idiot was caught in a simple trap. Any ninja worth their he could easily have avoided it. Besides, ninjas don't play this honorable game. Any ninja who plays fair needs to go back to the playground. Besides, it's Yami's fault. After I heard you talking at Ichiraku I ran up here to plant that trap for him, not for that big lug. Yami sneered at that last remark. Kasai was fuming. She opened her mouth again but was cut off when Yami spoke. That's enough, Kasai. Unfortunately the bastard is right and ninja's main weapon is deception. Help Bankatsu to the hospital. But what about you? Asked a scared Kasai. Don't worry about me, just help Bankatsu. Snapped Yami. But that Kasai proceeded to help Bankatsu up and drag him away. But not before he heard Bankatsu mutter, be careful. Yami and Jaimin both turned to each other and started to stare each other down. Jaimin was wearing a white robe which probably had his clan symbol of full moon on the back. From his position Yami could also see that he was wearing grey pants with matching boots. What worried Yami most was the long katana at Jaimin's side. He couldn't see the heat, it was probably still being used as a belt under the robe. Jaimin spoke. Seems the dead lass needs to be taught a lesson. If you apologize now I just might let you go. Go to hell, Yami replied coolly. Yami got into the basic academy Taijutsu stance. Damn it, this is what I get for leaving my weapons at home, Yami mentally cursed. Jaimin on the other hand was pissed. How dare he insult me, I'll make him pay. Jaimin pulled out a kunai with his left hand and grabbed the handle of his katana with his right. They both stared at each other down, waiting for the other to make the first move. Yami's cold blue eyes staring at Jaimin's red ones. Finally Jaimin threw the kunai at Yami. Yami sidestepped the kunai and started running at the tree Jaimin resided in. Okay, he's from the Jakani clan. With his Netsugan temperature eye activated, he sees the heat my body radiates, so there's no point in trying to sneak up on him, thought Yami. Jaimin jumped down at Yami, pulling out his katana at the same time. When he reached Yami, he attacked the psychic with a horizontal slash. Yami however jumped over the blade and Jaimin entirely and hit him in the back of the head with a kick as he was flying over him. Jaimin fell right on his face after that last move. When he landed, Yami quickly turned around to face the downed Jakani. Needless to say, Jaimin was pissed again. He jumped up to his feet and faced Yami once again. Jaimin lunged at Yami once again, swinging his sword around trying to hit the psychic. Yami narrowly managed to avoid every strike thrown at him. The idiot has completely lost it, he's blinded by anger. Jaimin was attacking so wildly he didn't even see Yami's hand seals. Jaimin performed one more horizontal strike at Yami, which swiftly gave the young boy a deep cut. Jaimin grinned at first, but was twisted into a shocked expression when he saw Yami change into a log with a poof of smoke. Kawarimi no JOOTSU replacement, damn it, Jaimin cursed. You psycho, that would have hurt like hell. Screamed an enraged psychic. Jaimin turned around in time to see Yami punch him in the gut. After the first strike, Yami quickly aimed a roundhouse kick right at Jimmy's head, and with a momentary shift from blue to silver, the kick sped up and knocked Jaimin on the floor a few meters back. The katana flew several feet as well. Jaimin was even more annoyed than before as he slowly got up. He pulled out several kunai. Yami was beginning to get back into his fighting stance when suddenly his eyes widened. Shit, those are explosive notes. Jaimin threw the first few kunai at Yami. Yami in response started dodging every kunai he could and in some cases jumped away from the explosions. He managed to avoid all the kunai, though he did get signed by some of the explosions. Jaimin had one more kunai in hand. This is my chance. Though Yami. Jaimin started to throw the kunai. Yami's eyes shifted to silver once again and he extended both his hands towards Jaimin. The kunai left Jaimin's hand. Yami used all his power to freeze the fast-moving projectile in place, a mere meter away from Jaimin. Jaimin's eyes widened. What the F? Jaimin started, but was immediately cut off by the explosion. Fortunately for Jaimin, he was far enough from the note to survive. He was however knocked back several feet. This time he didn't get back up. Yami took this time to recover from his large chakra consumption. On my head, Yami started to massage his temples. A few meters away, in a tree, hidden from the view of both combatants, one could see Godame and a young boy with glasses. So what do you think? Asked the older man. You're right, he's good, but the final decision belongs to Akami, stated the spectacled boy. The older man only nodded. He then turned to two and said, grab Jakani Jaimin and take him home and make sure to tell Jakani Soma of his transgressions today. They only nodded and disappeared. Back with Yami. Yami started to get up, though he was still severely weakened from his chakra usage. Suddenly he saw two appear next to the Jakani. The one in the bear mask spoke first. Good job, kid. The bear, masked as Anbu, picked up the Jekin and disappeared. The one in the frog mask spoke next. Your friend was taken care of and sent home. His wounds were nothing serious, but he'll need his rest. He should be fine by tomorrow. So you should go home and recover. After that, the frog masked ninja disappeared. Yami sighed and decided to accept the Anbu's advice. He'd see Bankatsu and Kasai later. The 5-year-old child was running through the streets. Said boy had a beautifully wrapped package in his tiny arms. He was smiling in his run. This will definitely make mama smile, the boy said. The boy reached his home. A large 2-story white mansion. A large front yard covered with flowers. The boy reached the door and opened it. Mommy? The black-haired boy called out. No answer. Mommy. He tried again. Still no answer. The child started walking through the house. He froze when he reached the doorway leading to the kitchen. There was a trail of blood coming from it. The child ran into the kitchen and his world shattered. There lay his mother, smiling. A cut on each of her wrists and one across her neck. Her lifeblood had run through, dyeing her beautiful white kimono a sickly red color. His mother's once gorgeous blonde hair was also a victim of the red liquid and was matted around her chest and shoulders. The boy could only stand there, staring at the motionless body of his mother. Tears started to slide down the boy's face. The package dropped from the boy's hands. Time seemed to stand still for the child. The boy's bright blue eyes continued to stare at the woman's lifeless ones for what seemed like hours. Then suddenly he broke down. Mother. Ah. The black-haired teen suddenly jumped up from his position on his bed. He was sweating profusely and breathing rapidly. Yami looked around. He was still in his room in his small apartment. Once his breathing settled and his heart rate returned to normal, he checked his clock. He had another hour before he absolutely needed to leave. Normally he would go back to sleep for another 50 minutes and spend the last 10 getting ready, but after that night he wouldn't be getting back to sleep. He never could after dreaming of his mother. He decided to start getting up. He grabbed a towel and jumped in the shower. 10 minutes later he came back out with a towel wrapped around his waist. He walked to his dresser and proceeded to get dressed. Looking at the mirror he could see his birthmark, its location where his neck meets his shoulder. His inheritance from his father. Yami sneered at the weird mark. It consisted of 3 black commas with the tails pointing outwards in different directions. Around it was a tattoo that was added later on order of the Tsukigakure. It was a black seal designed in the kanji for light. Sound bastard, cursed Yami. Yami got dressed in his usual attire, his new coat in place of his old red headband. Yami recalled a day about a year after the incident with his mother. He had attempted to cut out the mark when Megumi stated that it was from his father. Megumi of course stopped him quickly, stating that even if he were to cut it off its evil will still be there and would again after his wound healed. About a year after that the Tsukigakure finally learned what the abomination was, however, no matter how many times young Yami asked the Tsukigakure never told him what the mark was. He simply said, "It's a curse, Yami, and it could very well be the reason you can use your blood limit. We can't remove it, but I have a friend that can contain it." Soon the Tsukigikure's friend arrived and added the seal on Yami's birthmark. This blood limit's the signature move of all the Hikari Clan the Light Clan and the Hikari Kakuhan Light Whip. It was a beautiful whip created out of pure chakra. The size of the whip was directly related to the skill of the user, and although the chakra consumption was enormous, the whip itself was deadly in the right hands. Megumi said his mother, Kairi, was a master of it. According to Megumi, Kairi once took out 23 enemy jounin by herself with a 25 feet Hikari Kakuhan. Though he didn't get Hikari Kakuhan, he seemed to develop the odd ability to move objects with his mind. Yami, now fully dressed, went to sit down at his table and started eating his usual breakfast, a box of Pocky. The second blood limit of the Hikari clan never received an official name, most opting to call it a number of different things. Megumi however called it psychic precognition. She said it gave Kairi the ability to see dangerous things before they happened. Their mother was able to detect ambushes long before they occurred. It was like she saw the enemy without being anywhere near them, stated Megumi. Another skill that was lost through Yami or perhaps merely broken. He remembered he dreamed of the fight he had with Bankatsu the night before it occurred. But that could have been merely a coincidence. Yami had gotten beaten up before when he was younger and never dreamed a thing. Secondly, Megumi stated that the Hikari clan were able to see when they were still awake, not dreaming. Yami groaned and clutched his birthmark in anger. He was impure. He was an impure member of a clan that sounded so pure. It was for these reasons that Yami would never accept his role as the head of the Hikari clan. The Hikari clan, though one of the most prestigious clans in Tsukigakure, was rather small, and most members died out until it was only Kairi and himself. Then his mother gave up on life completely. To Yami he wasn't the clan survivor. To him the clan died out with Kairi. He couldn't even perform the clan signature. No matter how much Godame and Megumi urged him otherwise. Yami even refused to live in the Hikari estate. Not because he felt himself unworthy to live in his clan's estate, although he does, but because he just couldn't stand living there after his mother's suicide. The Tsukigakure had helped him acquire this small apartment about 3 weeks after the incident. He'd been living with Megumi before then. He didn't have to worry about money, being in one of the 5 most prestigious clans of Tsukigakure had its benefits. He looked to his open closet. There hangs an untouched elegant black ceremonial robe that signifies the head of the Hikari. Waizu had given it to him for his last birthday. Usually the higher-ups of the most prestigious clans would wear robes everywhere. However, Yami opted to keep his normal outfit. Waizu was a little disappointed but decided to let it go. "Yami, I want you to keep the robe and I'll hold the estate for you until you're ready to live in it. Someday I know you will be ready to take your position as clan head. I'll wait for that day," stated Waizu in a matter-of-fact tone. Yami sighed. He really didn't want to disappoint the Godame, however he just didn't think he would ever be able to be a clan head. He was still overly haunted by his mother's final decision. Other people, who were friends of Kairi, always blamed Yami for his mother's death because of what he was. And though he never admitted it to anybody, Yami blamed himself as well. The thing that pissed him off most was probably people like Megumi and Waizu who looked at him with pity. Though he loved Megumi and Waizu like parents, he didn't like being pitied. Yami finally finished his healthy breakfast and walked out the door, but not before grabbing another box of Pocky and slipping under his jack with his some weapons. He didn't feel like lugging around his shurikens all day, so he opted to take his regular shuriken. With that he was out the door. Though he didn't get Hikari Kakuhan, he seemed to develop the odd ability of moving things with his mind. After he told his sensei and the Tsukigakure, they stated that in some ways that would be much more useful then. He couldn't help but agree with them. If only he could get over the extreme chakra usage. It's getting easier, all I need to do is practice the tree climbing exercise more, Yami thought to himself. The tree climbing exercise was an idea of Megumi. Yami smiled when he recalled the event of him stopping Jaimin's kunai a second after he threw it. A year ago he would have tried to perform that move, and although he may have been able to perform, but not without passing out and waking up with a killer headache. Yami groaned that the other side effect of his technique was the humongous headache he received. Megumi suggested he keep a bottle of aspirin with him at all times. Yesterday's event taught him to trust her advice. Yo. Yami turned his head to hear who was yelling and smiled. He stopped and waited for Bankatsu to catch up to him. Bankatsu was one of Yami's most prized friends. He was one of the only people to know of the silver-eyed Yami. The other three being Kasai, Megumi, and Waizu. After the incident with his mother, Yami wrapped himself in a shell that neither Megumi nor Waizu could break. His life consisted of school, some basic training, and getting beaten up by other kids. Finally, after the incident with Bankatsu, he received his first real friend. He also stepped up his training to include telekinesis training and chakra control. About 2 years later, while walking to a training field together, they saw a tired-looking Kasai. Bankatsu quickly turned and opted to walk away. Yami, however, knowing of his friend's crush, decided on a more direct approach. Flashback training field, 1 year ago. "Hey Kasai," yelled Yami. Bankatsu turned to stare at his friend with wide eyes. Kasai turned to the duo and stared with questioning eyes. "Can me and Bankatsu join you and train with you?" Bankatsu's eyes, if possible, widened even more. Kasai merely grinned. "Sure, let's spar," yelled Kasai. Then flashback back with Yami and Bankatsu. Yami smiled at the memory of him acquiring his second true friend, and Bankatsu was even happier than he was. Bankatsu took him aside after that and thanked him. They had spent the rest of the day training with Kasai. Which actually was a bad idea, Yami shuddered. Must remember to never piss her off or I just may be burned alive. Bankatsu finally reached Yami. "Hey, how are you feeling?" asked Yami. "Okay now, but how about you, did you beat Jaimin?" asked Bankatsu. "I froze a kunai with an explosive note attached in mid-air about a few feet away from him," grinned Yami. Hearing that, Bankatsu started cracking up. "Oh, that's hilarious." Finally, after recompassing himself, Bankatsu said, "You better watch out, sooner or later he's going to find out about you. When he does, he'll probably discover it as you make him fall down the stairs every day. Oh, it will be years before Baka figures out it's me. And he's supposed to be near the top of the class. You would easily outrank him in the class if you weren't sleeping all day. He's only book smart, he barely has any skills. Has enough skills to catch you in a trap." "Shut up." They finally reached the academy. "Odd Kasai hasn't caught up to us yet," noted Yami. "She said she was going to come early in the morning to visit me and then walk me to the academy," explained Bankatsu. Bankatsu shuddered. "In fact, she came a little too early and my miserable little sister led her to my room while I was changing and send Sakatsu my love by the way," interrupted Yami with a smirk. Bankatsu's eyebrow twitched. "Anyway, like I was saying, she decided to go off ahead without me." "I see," stated Yami. They were about to walk into the building when, "You bastard!" shouted an enraged voice. Yami and Bankatsu turned to the new voice. Running up to them was an enraged Jaimin. He was wearing his usual white robe and apparently he had gotten his sword back. "How dare you deceive me with such an underhanded trick?" Yami glared daggers. "You started it. In case you forgot. You caught Bankatsu in that stupid trap." Yami snapped back. Bankatsu was ready to pounce on Jaimin. "I demand a rematch and this time I'll make sure you won't cheat," Jaimin yelled. Bankatsu snapped, "Why, you little forget him, we still have a score to settle ourselves." Both Bankatsu and Jaimin stared at each other. "What's going on here?" The three turned to see an angry-looking Megumi. "There will be no fighting today. Go to class now." Jaimin glared back at the two friends. "We'll finish this later, worms," stated Jaimin, who then stalked off. The two friends sighed and went to class themselves. Academy, classroom. Yami was at his normal seat like normal, half asleep like normal. He looked around the room. There were many ninja hopefuls still in the academy, yet Yami could only remember some of them. There was Ishida, Bankatsu of course, sneaking glances at Kasai. His good friend was definitely one of the more skilled geniuses at the academy. Wasn't from a particular clan or family, but his father was a well-known ninja, and many people hoped he'd inherit his greatness. Needs to pay more attention though. I actually think Jaimin taught him a good lesson. Then there was Yuzuki Kasai. She came from the Yuzuki family, a family known for using fire-based anti-jutsu. I still have the burn marks to prove it. Then came Jaimin. He was a higher up in the Jakani clan. The Jakani was one of the 5 prestigious clans of Tsukigakure, the first one formed. Known for their Netsugen with its ability to sense heat. They were also known for their unmatched skill with a katana. Still has a lot to learn. Makyazai Kauji was the heir of another of the 5 prestigious clans, formed at about the same time as Hikari. The Makyazai clan, the Wood clan, had the power to use plants as weapons. It said that the first Hokage of Konohagakure was a relative of this clan before they became an actual clan. Yami remembers Kauji simply because Kauji was good. Kauji was probably the only one that could match Kitsune. Only person I know that can make flowers scary. Then there was Yugami Aki. She's not from any special clan or family. However, she does have a mean punch. She's probably the strongest in the class with Taijutsu. Even if I use my power, she still kicks my ass, sighed Yami, remembering all the beatings he received whenever they sparred. Takabashi Jiu of the Takabashi clan, the Hawkeye clan. The Takabashi wasn't one of the 5 prestigious clans, but they were still greatly respected for their Buenkyu Gan telescope eye. With it they can see over a mile away. This skill makes them great with range weapons and even better strategists. Jiu were well lazy. He was very intelligent, but well, he was lazy. He's fighting Yami for the position of dead last. Don't really know much about him in the short time. Whenever one of us is awake, the other is usually sleeping. Next came the Hana Flower sisters. Hana Sakura and Hana Am. What can one say about the twins? Sadists, both of them. Kasai once said their family belongs to a long line of interrogators dating all the way back to Konohagakure to a man named Abigihim, or was it Adiki? Together they can ensnare any one of their guinea pigs classmates, and that will leave them scarred for weeks. They seem to have the odd ability to completely sync with each other. Whenever they fight together they are always perfectly coordinated, though they're not good by themselves. Whenever they're coordinated with each other, they get to the point where they finish the other's sentences. Man, that's weird, shuddered Yami. Finally came Uzumaki Kitsune, great-granddaughter of Uzumaki Naruto. Much like himself, she was also the last of her clan. Actually, I think her aunt is still alive, but since she wasn't a ninja she couldn't be the heiress. Her parents died when she was young. Her clan's blood limit was a fast regeneration, contract with foxes, and the ability to receive the Kyuubi. The latter was only to be given to the head of the clan. Every time someone with the Kyuubi, the great fox spirit, would die, Kyuubi's spirit would escape and return to a seal within the Uzumaki compound and await the new clan head. Though I think Tsukigakure said it could be removed without the person's dying. With the Kyuubi, the ninja would gain even greater regeneration, the ability to summon the fox boss, and a humongous boost to their chakra supply. This was the secret of the Uzumaki clan. The gift that only an Uzumaki could receive. She's going to receive it on. Okay class, pay attention. Megumi-sensei called out. Successfully breaking Yami out of his trance again. Okay, I'm going to read out your team assignment, so pay attention. And so she started to read out the list of teams. Hope I get Bankatsu and Kasai on my team. Yami was surprised during the team listings, as was the rest of the class. AM was chosen for a team, and Sakura wasn't. Why would they separate the flower twins? They symbolize teamwork. It's a mistake to put them on different teams. Thought Yami and almost the rest of the class. Team 15, Megumi continued, not noticing or paying attention to the fuming twins. Ishida, Bankatsu Yami, Bankatsu, and Kasai were all ears. They crossed their fingers. Yuzuki Kasai Yami felt his heart rate increase. Both of his friends were on the same team. Maybe, just maybe, Takabashi. You maybe wanted him to suffer. Yami's head dropped to the table. Bankatsu and Kasai were both disheartened by this. Yami merely waited to hear his name, so his teammates couldn't be all that bad. Team 19, Hikari Yami. Yami was all ears once again. Hope started welling up inside of him. He'd probably still get a good team. Jikani Jaimin. Yami resisted the urge to cry, and Megumi's glare quelled Jaimin's urge to scream. Uzumaki Kitsuno, and it gets better. Yami's was still face first against the table. Jaimin was seething, and no one could quite tell what Kitsune was thinking. After a few more minutes, Megumi was finally finished. Your sensei will be here in about an hour, don't be late for that last part. She chose to glare at Yami and Jai. With that said, she poofed out of the classroom. Students started to exit out of the classroom. Kasai and Bankatsu approached Yami. Hey man, cheer up, just work really hard, 6 months till the Chunin exams. If you don't screw up you can get out of that team, encouraged by Bankatsu. Yami could only groan. Cheer up Yami, we're going to Ichitaku, why don't you come with me? Asked Kasai. If you don't mind, I'd like to be alone for a while, thanks though, was Yami's reply. Bankatsu and Kasai frowned a bit before complying. With that they left him. Yami just sat there in his own thoughts when a soft voice caught his attention. Yami? Yami looked up to see Kitsune standing right next to his desk with a still seething Jaimin right next to him. We wanted to know if you would come have lunch with us so get to know each other, as a team I mean. Yami raised an eyebrow. Why is she being so nice to me? She hasn't even spoken to me since. Well. What's your answer? We haven't got all day. Replied an obviously pissed Jaimin. A look from Kitsune shut him up though. No way this can end well, better try to get out of it, were Yami's immediate thoughts. Sorry I didn't bring lunch. It was true he had already finished the box of Pocky he brought with him. It's not a problem. Neither did Jaimin. I brought a big lunch for my whole team. So would you please eat with us, begged Kitsune. He was stuck. He couldn't think of a single way to get out of it. I know I'll regret this. Alright. I'll come. Outside, benches. Yami, Jaimin, and Kitsune were all stuck in an uncomfortable silence. Yami tried to avoid both his teammates' gazes. Jaimin was still angry about Yami's victory. Kitsune had absolutely nothing to say. Every now and then Yami and Jaimin would compliment Kitsune on lunch. Suddenly Kitsune asked, so why don't we talk about ourselves? Why don't one of you start? Yami glanced at Kitsune who was staring at him and then he shifted to Jaimin who was also staring at him. The psychic sighed. There's not much to tell really. I'm an orphan, I don't know too many, I prefer Taijutsu and I prefer shuriken as a weapon. You're also a coward. Sneered Jaimin. Yami glared at the Jakani. Kitsune also glared. That's enough Jaimin, stated Kitsune. No, I've been holding it in for the longest time now, I need to hear this. Jaimin, what's your problem? Yami, you're a coward. You dishonor your whole family by not living up to your responsibility as a clan heir. Jaimin, Yami's eyes widened. That's why half the village hates you. Jaimin, please, that's quite enough, pleaded Kitsune. Yami looked downhearted. I just can't. I'm not even a real Hikari, stated Yami. I don't give a damn who your father is, all I care about is your mother. She was a Hikari, and so are you, stated the Jakani. Yami's eyes widened, and Jaimin knew about his father. A quick glance at Kitsune suggested that she didn't know a thing. She had a confused expression on her face. The rest of the hour was spent in complete silence. When it was over they returned back to their classrooms to wait for their sensei. Academy, classroom. Yami was still thinking about Jaimin's words, he couldn't think of anything else. Jaimin looked to be in deep thought himself though what he was thinking of was unknown to Yami. Kitsune was still confused. She didn't know much about Yami's past. She wanted to ask, but at the moment thought it might be rude. Jounin have been poofing in and out of the classrooms gathering their teams. Suddenly, Team 19. The new team looked down to see a woman standing by the door. Said woman was dressed as a standard Jounin. Dark blue shirt and pants. Jounin vest. And dark blue ninja sandals. What caught their attention most was her pupilless bright purple eyes. A Hyuga. Thought Yami. The Hizuuga clan was the last most prestigious clan of Tsukigakure. I think their blood limit is the Byakugan. Team 19. She spoke again, effectively breaking Yami and apparently Jaimin and Kitsune out of their trance. The three got up and walked to the Jounin. She stared at all three. Meet me at the playground. With that she poofed out of the classroom. Wow, I really want to learn that move. Yami thought as he and his team moved to the roof. Academy, playground. All four were in an uncomfortable circle. Kitsune on a swing. Jaimin on the edge of a sandbox. Yami on the monkey bars. Why in the hell did she choose this of all places to meet? And how in the hell is she doing that? The Jounin was sitting on one side of a seesaw, however, she was still in midair, her side of the seesaw would not go down. It was literally as if an invisible weight, much heavier than the Jounin, was pushing on the other side. After pushing some of her red hair out of her face she said okay let's introduce ourselves name, likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams. Sensei, why don't you go first? Asked Kitsune. Okay my name is Hyuga Hindi, I like my friends, dislike lots of things, my hobbies including planting and training, and I don't particularly have a dream. Okay you brooding guy. Pointing at Jaimin. He was caught off guard by the comment. My name is Yakani Jaimin, I like Kitsune took a second to look at said girl, who immediately blushed, I dislike cowards took a second to look at said boy, who resisted the urge to flick him off. My hobby is painting. And my dream for the future is to win Kitsune's hand. Shouted Jaimin. Kitsune, if at all possible, blushed even more. I'm not even going to touch that, signed the Jounin. Okay goth kid. Pointing at Yami. Yami's eyebrow twitched. Goth. My name is Hikari Yami. I like my friends and Pocky, Jaimin snorted. That's an understatement, he muttered. Kitsune giggled. Yami glared but continued, I hate my father. This caught Kitsune's attention and she again wondered what was the deal with Yami's father. Yami continued, my hobbies included training my taijutsu. He didn't want anyone to know about him yet he'd tell them before their first mission together. Hindi smiled sadly at this. My dream as well at the moment. It's just to be strong, he finished. I seem to be suffering from some issues. I wish I could give him stupid advice. Thought Hindi. Okay Uzumaki-sama you're up. Yami and Jaimin both sweat dropped at the sudden respect the Jounin showed. Kitsune smiled sweetly and started to speak. My name is Uzumaki Kitsune. I love my friends, the village and ramen. Was an understatement. Yami remembers seeing her down 10 bowls of ramen in half an hour. I dislike Atogakure and Konohagakure. Konohagakure was understandable after how they treated her ancestor and well everyone hated Atogakure. My hobbies include reading, training, and taking walks. and my dream. She stopped for a second, as if trying to decide whether to go on or not. Yami noted the unsure look on her face. Finally she smiled again, looked up towards the sky, and said, "My dream is to ease my ancestor's spirit. My dream is to defeat the immortal Otaka Orochimaru and to free Sasuke Uchiha from his control once and for all." The other ninjas could only stare at the young girl before them. Yami could do nothing more but stare at the young girl Orochimaru. Yami was walking down the road. He was munching on a stick of Pocky like he did every morning. He was wearing his normal outfit, except this time he opted to bring his Fuma shurikens, both of which were attached to the back, his belt partially hidden by his jacket. He was thinking of what his teammate said yesterday. Jaimin stated that he was a coward for not accepting his title. I hate to admit it, but I guess he does have a point. Kitsune's declaration of her noble dream. I wonder who this Sasuke Uchiha is and what he has to do with Orochimaru and Naruto-sama. Lastly, his sensei stated that they were going to be participating in a survival exam to see if they were qualified as genin. Why does she keep looking at me so oddly? They were all supposed to meet at Training Field 22. I wonder what kind of exam this will be. Training Field 22. Yami arrived at the training field. This training field was actually just a section of the forest that was used to train and try to simulate actual combat. He took this time to look around. Jaimin was there in his usual outfit. He seemed to be fingering his sword nervously. Probably afraid of failing. Kitsune was also there. Yami's eyes widened. She was sitting on a rock, staring at the ground, wearing a beautiful dark blue robe. The Uzumaki symbol is a crescent moon with a spiral. She was also matching pants and sandals. Yami noted that they weren't traditional ninja sandals. At her waist was a beautiful red-orange fox mask. Finally was the most beautiful katana he had ever seen. That was on her back compared to Jaimin, who had his katana at his hip. The blade's hilt was black and gold and had an elegant design, the sheath black with a golden fox on the side. There's probably one on both sides. Yami couldn't stop staring. She's so beautiful. His face started to blush. It blushed 10 shades hotter when she caught his gaze. He turned away. Damn Bankatsu, filling my head with perverted thoughts. He opted to lean on a tree waiting, facing away from the Uzumaki heiress. That didn't stop her from staring, though she looked like she was fighting to get something out. Yami turned to the future container. My 12th birthday is coming up in exactly 1 month. That's the day I become the head of my clan and receive the Kyuubi. I was hoping you would attend. Yami raised his eyebrow. Before he could reply, well, all of the clan heads are going to be present during that time. Tsukigakure said you might not attend. I was hoping you change your mind. I'd really like for both of my teammates to be there, and Jaimin already agreed. The inauguration. This will be the day Kitsune receives the spirit of the Kyuubi via seal in her navel. As the last Uzumaki, it will be her responsibility to bear the Kyuubi. Yami remembered that Tsukikage speaking of that day. He said all the clan heads would be there and he wanted Yami to attend as the head of the Hikari. Yami declined. He also remembers her special training that was supposed to take place after that day. Firstly, from the moment she becomes a genin, she will do nothing but D-rank missions until her 12th birthday. Afterwards she would take 2 months off to do nothing but training with her senseis and others that would volunteer to help train her. Naturally, since they would lose both their sensei and their teammate, her teammates would also receive the same training for 2 months off. Afterwards they would receive their first C-rank mission. It's understandable, the one who received Kyuubi had the greatest potential in the village, and so everyone wanted to make sure they were ready to defend themselves. Yami mentally kicked himself. All this time thinking, and she was still waiting for an answer. Jaimin looked impatiently at him. Kitsune, however, continued to stare at him patiently. Yami sighed. He really didn't want to do anything that had to deal with being a clan head, but he really didn't want any tension between his teammate and himself, so he was stuck. Yay, sure, I'll come. Kitsune happily nodded at him. Jaimin looked a little stunned that he actually agreed. So with it they continued to wait for their sensei. They didn't wait much longer. Glad to see you're all here on time, stated the Jounin, catching her students' attention. The trio turned to see their sensei plus 2 others. These 2 points will be observing the test and help me decide who to keep and who to cut. The genin hopefuls winced at this. The 2 jumped high into the trees. Hindi simply stood still. Alright, the rules are, you have to impress me. Use anything you want, you may fight together or separately, makes no difference to me, however you might want to come at me with killer intent or you won't have a chance, stating Hindi. Whenever you're ready. The trio jumped high into the trees. Jaimin, Netsugan taught the Jakani. He activated his blood limit. His pupils quickly shifted to a blue color. He looked down at his teacher from his hiding spot. He wanted to make sure that she wasn't a Jinjutsu before he made his move. He grinned when he saw the red and orange silhouette. He grabbed his katana and launched himself down. When he was in range he performed a horizontal slash, one that would have beheaded her if she hadn't ducked. She then grabbed woman's leg whilst he was still in midair and threw him behind her and right into a rock. After peeling himself off the rock, he immediately grabbed his blade and lunged at the teacher. He started to attack her wildly. Unfortunately, she blocked the blade each time by grabbing it between two of her fingers. How is that possible? Thought a grim Jaimin. After realizing his attempts were futile, he jumped back and jumped high into a tree. Indy was still standing there, looking nonchalant, as if nothing happened. This made Jaimin's blood boil. He started to pull out a few special kunai, the ones with explosive tags on them. He threw the kunai at his sensei, who didn't even move. The kunai hit the ground around the and exploded. They hadn't even moved when the explosions engulfed her. The explosions created so much heat that Jaimin couldn't see correctly, so he deactivated his Netsugen. Jaimin raised an eyebrow. Oh my goodness, I killed her. Jaimin continued to cheer and grimace. Cheer at the fact that he defeated A and grimace at the fact that he killed his sensei. However, when the smoke cleared, Jaimin nearly choked. Laying there was a tied up, bloody, and burned Uzumaki heiress, staring right at him with pleading eyes. Jaimin's eyes widened and he jumped down to aid the future container. Kitsune. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it was you there. Jaimin apologized over and over again when suddenly he felt someone tap his shoulder. He looked back to see a frowning looking down on him. Lesson 1, Jaimin, don't tell future opponents who you're infatuated with. Lesson 2, don't fall for such an obvious trap. With that said, they quickly tapped him a few times in his chest and he fainted. Yami grimaced. He had a front row seat to Jaimin's quick defeat. He couldn't blame him though. When he saw Kitsune lying on the ground in such a horrible condition, he was about to jump down himself. However, from the angle he was at, he would see a smirking Hindi behind a tree, so he chose against it. Luckily, that was the right choice of action. Now he was watching as he carefully placed the unconscious Genin behind a rock and went back to the position she started from. Yami thought about this carefully. He only had his telekinesis and his taijutsu to help him pass this test. He could start with his regular shuriken, but the chakra it required to activate his power might make him aware of where he was. He could start off by throwing his Fuma shuriken, which he was getting really good at controlling, but it had the same problem as the regular shuriken. Finally, he could say the hell with it all and attack her with taijutsu or even use the Fuma as a weapon, but he'd probably get made a fool of just like the Jakani. Yami decided to follow up with a combination of the last two options. He pulled out both of his Fuma shuriken and flicked them open. He had his back against the tree trunk. If the tree trunk weren't there, his back would be facing the Jounin. He looked over the side of the tree and flung his Fuma at it. His arms still extended over the side of the tree and his eyes shifted silver. This time they remained like that. The teacher clearly saw Fuma heading towards her and slightly leaned to the side just enough to avoid the shuriken. She turned to the direction Fuma came from and let out a little smirk. I hope she can't see my eyes. With his eyes shining silver, he wouldn't be able to blend into the shadows of the forest as well. He was hoping he wasn't telling his teacher where he was. Luckily, she wasn't moving. Either she didn't notice him or she didn't care. Well, let's see if I can get her. The Fuma that went past started to do a U-turn and came back at her. It was about to reach her when suddenly she turned and promptly avoided it. It was obvious that the move caught her off guard because she had a shocked look on her face. Yami smirked. He once again turned the Fuma and sent it back to the dot, the look of shock still evident on her face. She started to pull something out of one of her pockets. Finally, she pulled out a kunai throw at Fuma. A kunai versus a Fuma. PFFT, no contest. He smirked, which promptly turned into a frown. When the two projectiles connected, an explosion was heard. When the smoke cleared, he could see the shattered remains of his shuriken. Shit, if she started throwing explosive notes, he'd be screwed. The only reason I could stop Jaimin's kunai that day was because he was just a rookie, and it still gave me one hell of a headache. She started staring in his direction again, as if daring him to make a move. Well, she obviously knows where I am, so what the hell. He sent his other Fuma flying and sped it up with his power. The Fuma sped towards the Hizuuga, but once again she chose to just lean to the side and let it sail by her. She quickly turned and watched it. What surprised him was that the Fuma ricocheted off a rock and landed on the ground. Was the sound that came out of his sensei's mouth. He concentrated chakra to his feet and launched himself at the dot that turned into time to block a punch aimed straight at her face. Yami growled at the fact that she caught him. He aimed a psychic-enhanced kick right at her head, his eyes still shining silver. However, she caught the kick as well with her other hand. He smirked at the slightly surprised look on her face. Probably wasn't expecting my blows to be so strong, or maybe just so quick. However, surprised or not, she still had him. He needed to end this quickly. Controlling his Fuma and enhancing his blows was wasting his chakra like it was going out of style, and he didn't even want to think about the headache that he was starting to receive. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see his Fuma lying helplessly on the ground. He bent back and recalled it to his hand. When it reached his hand he attempted to attack the only to have her dodge each strike whilst still keeping a firm grip on his leg and dominant arm. Yami growled once again. He dropped the Fuma and gave the seals to Kawarimi no Jutsu. Yami gave a sigh of relief. He was currently standing in another small clearing meters away from the spot he fought his sensei at. He was finally freed. Ahem, Yami's blood ran cold. He turned to look at his sensei who had a smirk plastered on her face. He quickly concentrated chakra to his feet but not before they tried to knock him out the same way she got Jaimin. He quickly put his arms up to divert the blows away from his chest, which he did, and quickly jumped high into the trees. He leapt from tree to tree, hoping to keep a distance away from his teacher. His arms were sore and limp, he couldn't move them at all. His head was killing him from using his power too much and his chakra reserves were down so much. He was high up in a tree. From this position he could see that his teacher returned to her original position at the other clearing. He sighed and leaned against the tree he was currently in. He was breathing heavily and his heart was pounding. He was about to grab some aspirin to take care of his headache when he remembered his arms couldn't move. Damn it all. Yami turned to look at his teacher. His eyes widened. The Uzumaki heiress was flying through the air with a spiraling blue ball in her hand. Rasengan, hit soon. Alright, I think I'm up next, thought the blonde. She had just seen her two teammates beaten before her eyes. Jaimin fell quickly because of an illusion he saw of her being hurt. She frowned at this, feeling that it was her fault. Of course she knew it was and apparently so did Yami. It looks like he improved a little in resisting Genjutsu, Kitsune silently hoped. Afterwards he let loose his Fuma Shuriken, one of which seemed to have a mind of its own. I wonder if he was controlling it with a chakra string, asked the Uzumaki. After his little one-sided fight with their teacher, they both disappeared. About a minute later her teacher returned, without Yami. She probably just left him wherever she knocked him out. Alright. It's my turn now, stated the young blonde. She holds out both her hands, as if she's trying to grasp something invisible, concentrating on chakra. Spin, spin, spin. Seconds later it was an imperfect spinning ball of blue energy. Rasengan, she whispered. Afterwards she launched herself at her teacher. When Hinata turned to the soaring heiress her eyes widened again. She quickly sidestepped the girl and grabbed her arm, the one with the Rasengan. The heiress quickly stopped concentrating chakra to her Rasengan, which quickly dissipated and in the blink of an eye pulled out her katana and beheaded her teacher. She quickly sheathed her sword and ran past the decapitated body that then turned into a log with a poof of smoke. She grabbed some and hurled them through the air into a nearby tree. The teacher jumped out of the tree and the two engaged each other into jutsu. Kitsune narrowed her eyes, she isn't using Jaiuken. They traded blows back and forth, each either blocking or dodging the other's hit. I'm getting tired out and she still is going easy on me. Thought an angry heiress. She jumped back and quickly did a set of hand seals. She put her hand to her mouth and blew Kaiten. Hausenka no Jutsu, fire release. Mythical fire phoenix technique. With that multiple fireballs started heading towards the dot, however, Hindi was currently finishing her own hand seals. Suiton. Sujinheki, water release. Water encampment wall. Water, from a nearby lake, rose around Hindi and easily blocked against the fire technique. After the water subsided Kitsune's eyes widened. Where is she asked desperately looking around. Kitsune's heart stopped when she heard a voice, you're a little too dangerous for your own good. Kitsune turned around just in time to see Hinata's flurry of taps around her neck and chest. She was out like a light a second later and fell into Hinata's arms. Yami's eyes were wide open. After that intense battle between the two Kunoichi he was in complete shock. They both are so strong. Kitsune is so much stronger than me, but she couldn't even touch Hindi-sensei. Yami hadn't realized he had spoken out loud. He saw the turn to him, his blood ran cold. Yami got down here, the test is over, she said. Yami could only nod and jump down to their senses. She was busy carrying Kitsune to the still unconscious Jaimin. Yami looked over and saw his Fuma. He promptly picked it up, folded it and attached it to the back of his belt again. The two who were judging the test came down next to Hindi. Yami could hear them whispering something. This was driving him nuts. He finally spoke, so how did we do? Hindi turned to him with a frown, she then glanced at one of the who promptly nodded and she sighed, I'm sorry Yami, but you failed. His world shattered wwwhatt he squeaked. He was so sure he did well. Hindi continued to look at him and opened her mouth to speak but was immediately cut off. She means you're far too weak. She means you'll only hold back your other two teammates, so we're failing you, sneered a glaring Redeed. Male. The other two immediately sneered at him. That's enough Kazu. Screamed the other unknown, male. Hinata shifted her gaze back to the heartbroken boy. I'm sorry Kayami. With that she disappeared in a puff of smoke with her other two students. The unknown was just about to speak when Kazu spoke. Miserable worm, you'll never be anything. We should have killed you the day you were born. You're a disappointment, and you'll always be a disappointment just like your father. I'm froze his father. He would always be his father's son. He remembered his mom commenting that, besides his bright happy blue eyes, he looked just like his father, that man, the one who came to Tsukigakure, the one who claimed to be a merchant, the one who his mother fell in love with, the one who was a spy, the one who slowly drove his mother to suicide, the one who RRRR knew. But that a swirl of black, purple, and blue chakra swirled around Yami. Red flame-like markings decorating his face and right arm. His eyes no longer slightly shining, but actually glowing silver. They were stunned. The killer intent was too much. I am nothing like him. At the last word he launches himself at Kazu and punches him across the face. The punch pushed him back several feet, but it did break him out of his trance, and when he looked up he had to defend against an enraged psychic. Yami was throwing a flurry of punches at the who, after the first punch, blocked them all. Finally he saw an opening and punched Yami as hard as he could in the gut. Yami dropped to the ground and started coughing up blood. Finally it dawned on him what he was doing. The red markings receded back to wherever they came from, and the evil chakra dissipated, and his eyes changed back to those cold blue eyes. Kazu was fuming. He grabbed a hold of the boy by his neck and slammed him into a tree. Kazu pulled out a kunai and held it ready to strike the genin. Yami could only watch as Kazu was about to strike when suddenly he grabbed his arm. Kazu sneered, "Let me go, Ken. Think about it for a second what the Tsukikage will do to you when he finds out you killed him, and if you don't care, think about what Megumi and Hindi will do to you." Kazu growled angrily. He threw the psychic to the ground. "Those three won't be able to protect you forever," spat Kazu. Kazu then disappeared in a puff of smoke. Pen looked at the boy sadly. He offered the psychic a hand and said, "Promise not to go all dark on me and I'll take you to the hospital," he joked. Yami sniffled. "I'll be fine." Ken was about to ask again, but was cut off. "Please, I just want to be alone." Ken could tell the boy was at the edge of tears. "Fine, do me a favor though, don't do something stupid, and here, take this, it'll restore your chakra and help you walk around." Ken dropped a soldier pill in Yami's hand, then he disappeared. Yami looked at the soldier pill in his hand and swallowed it. He shakily got up and proceeded to move through the forest. He decided to go to one of his favorite spots in the forest. Somewhere in the middle of the forest, Yami was sitting on a tree branch in the middle of the vast forest. Trees were all surrounding him on all sides. Tears were sliding down Yami's face. Some sakura petals were falling from the trees and one landed on his lap. Suddenly, Yami turned to see a silver-haired boy flying towards him. His arms extended out to each side, each holding a wakizashi. It looked like the boy was gliding at him using the short swords as wings. Weakling. The silver-haired youth was about to reach Yami when suddenly Yami launched himself to another tree. "Oh god, I remember this guy, but wasn't that just a dream?" thought the confused, slightly scared psychic. The silver-haired youth stood on the branch that Yami had just been on. The youth was taller than him. His silver hair running down just past his shoulders, a grey muscle shirt with a fishnet undershirt, black baggy pants, black boots, black fingerless gloves, finally a wakizashi in each. "Shit, I'm in no condition to be fighting this guy." It was true, he was still suffering from lack of chakra and was slightly dizzy from the headache he had earlier. The youth launched himself at the psychic. "Okay, I'm going to love way too much chakra fighting up here, so I'd best go down and try to go back to solid ground." With that, Yami grabbed his last two, Madame Hindi for blowing the other up, and jumped to the ground. When he landed he sighed without having to waste chakra on sticking to trees. "I might be able to defend myself." The youth landed a few feet away from the psychic. They both faced off, Yami's cold blue eyes staring at his green ones. The boy jumped at the psychic. They both started exchanging blows, Yami with his Fuma and the boy with his. Yami was grunting, trying to block every blow thrown at him, and the boy was smiling. "He's just playing with me." They went on like that for what seemed like hours to Yami, but it was only a few minutes. He was constantly getting tired. His headache wasn't helping him. The boy still continued to smile at him. "I got to stop him somehow." An idea popped into his head. Actually, he was only thinking about how he used to trip Jaimin. "This better work or I am so screwed." With that, his eyes shifted silver and he pulled his attacker's foot up. The boy fell flat on his back, and before he could get up the blade of a Fuma was pressed to his neck. "Why the hell are you attacking me?" yelled an angry Yami. The boy smirked and with a puff of smoke turned into a log. Yami's eyes widened and before he could do anything he felt a blade make contact with his throat. "Oh, you're good, Hikari, real good." Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time, till then, sayonara.